Melatonin is by far the most important molecule when it comes to detoxing your body, yeah? Getting rid of all those nasty pesticides and plasticizers and some of the poisons your body is producing in the gut. Melatonin works at every single layer and level to help get that out of the body. Now, you probably know melatonin as the sleep neurohormone, the things that make you a little bit drowsy at night once it's dark. But it has 101 other functions that are just as important. And I'll show you how important they are. But remember, it's much, much more important than just extra sleep or better sleep or getting to sleep. And first of all, you have to understand that toxins basically work by blocking nutritional pathways. For example, heavy metal, something like lead or cadmium or mercury, these are deadly heavy metals. They go in there and they block a nutritional pathway so the enzymes can't work, so they block it. If you have a pesticide like a chlorpyrifos or one of the ones you can spray around the home or something, they usually block the metabolic pathways in your nervous system. And in the case of flies, for example, they overstimulate it, but they work through blocking nutritional pathways. If you can understand that, then you can understand some of the many, many benefits of melatonin. But the other aspect of toxins is you've got the outside ones. These are the ones like the heavy metals, the plasticizers that you get, the forever chemicals you get. And I've been working in that area for nearly 40 years now. I used to teach a unit at university called Pollutants and Toxicology many, many decades ago. So we've got the outside pollutants, but we've also got ones that we produce in our body. And these are some of the byproducts of our metabolism. These are some of the byproducts of the junk foods and things we have in our body. It tries to eliminate it through various mechanisms. So understand that there are both outside and inside toxins when I talk about detox. Now, it's also important to understand that detoxing your body isn't just about melatonin. It's not just about the food you eat. It's not just about a detox. It's about a diet, a lifestyle. It's about an attitude. It's about your environment. And I'll put all these together in another video to show you how we do it holistically, the different layers and levels of it. But first and foremost, it's really important to understand that melatonin, we know, has evolved in plants. So virtually every plant has melatonin at incredibly low levels. You can't get anywhere near enough melatonin from the foods, even things like tart cherries. You'd have to have a couple of thousand of them basically every day to get a minuscule amount. So you don't get enough in your food. Hence why your body produces melatonin in your gut, in your liver, all throughout your body, the cells, particularly where there's a lot of energy being expended, even in your brain cells, where there's a lot of energy being expended when you're thinking, then melatonin is being produced because it helps get rid of all the toxins. And when we look at that, plants have used melatonin for millions and millions and millions of years as a primary mechanism to get rid of toxins. So then we go on to how does it help us in terms of detoxing from our own system? And the first most important thing is to remember that sleep is probably the most important time. Nighttime sleep is the most important time for detoxing the body. That's why in all my other videos I've said, don't eat late at night, don't do things late at night, let your body calm down, do what it's supposed to be. Your immune system works best at nighttime. Your digestive system works best at nighttime when they're all just left to be. But what we find, for example, at sleep, when you're going into a deep sleep, literally you're getting spinal fluid injected into your brain every 20, 30, 40 seconds, minute or so, flushing out all of the toxins in there, toxins from maybe the outside toxins or maybe some of the ones that were produced in there as a result of trying to protect you. And it flushes it out, and the blood comes through again and pushes it out. What's great about melatonin is that it can get into that brain through the blood-brain barrier. It can get into the fatty parts and the water parts. But sleep enables us to produce more melatonin in our pineal or pineal gland and to get rid of the toxins. For example, getting rid of the beta amyloid plaque, which is associated with Alzheimer's, which is, of course, something everybody is concerned about. And so the injection from the spinal fluid occurs only at sleep. And guess what controls your sleep? Yes, It's melatonin. That's the first thing that helps you get drowsy at night. In dark, supplementing with melatonin. You're probably thinking, hold on, but I'm probably producing some. Well, if you're 35 years old, you're not producing much melatonin anymore. So it's a really simple process. Sleep, melatonin sleep link, enables the brain to start clearing out the gunk in there. That's the simplest strategy. Now, melatonin has a huge role in your immune system, and your immune system is what obviously tries to get rid of the toxins. It attacks the toxins, bacteria and viruses and the toxins they produce and the allergens that go in and lots of bits and pieces. Your immune system literally attacks it and tries to eliminate it. And your immune system, at every single layer of your immune system, is coordinated by melatonin. So you can see how important it is. Then you've got the lymph, which is what drains out all melatonin. Then you've got your circulation. All your circulatory problems and issues, one way or another, are linked to or derived from or can be improved with melatonin. Wow! Big statement, isn't it? Well, that's why there are 10,000 studies on the benefits of melatonin. And that's probably just in the last 10 years, and there are so many. And then finally, melatonin works on improving the gut microbiome and gut health in general. As you'll see from a couple of the other videos I've done on melatonin in the gut, it works on improving movement through the gut, but it stimulates the growth of the good bacteria in the gut, which are the first layer of detoxing the body. You see, in your gut, the wrong type of bacteria produce toxins, get through the barrier and into the blood, causing toxic side effects. That's things like arthritis, the inflammation in the joints, and all those other issues, Alzheimer's, all those are linked to the toxins produced in the gut. But also a healthy gut breaks down those external toxins, for example, pesticides. And I've already shown you some of the information in my other videos about gut detoxifying. But the gut, it works on all these levels and so many other levels. But what's really important is when you look at it, we know it's antioxidant. So when the toxins are producing their toxic effects, usually it's called oxidation. They're producing what's called reactive oxygen species. And these are the ones that kind of rip apart your cells and rip apart the molecules and rip apart the atom and do damage. So melatonin is a potent antioxidant. It's potent anti-inflammatory. So the damage that's done by the toxins, which is that leftover inflammation, the bruising, the scarring, those problems, the soreness of it, the redness of it, all those things, and the internal inflammation, it's a potent anti-inflammatory. But it also crosses all the barriers. So it can get into the blood-brain barrier, it can cross into the blood, it can go all through the body because it can get into through the fatty cell membranes and so on, and literally into the cells, into the liquid watery parts, and into where all the work is done in the mitochondria. And that's where all the real energy in our body is produced. Nothing works in our body. We don't produce any energy without the mitochondria. And what protects, looks after, cleans out. There's something called mitophagy, which is your mitochondria cleaning it out and cleaning out the cells. Guess what coordinates all that? Yes, it's melatonin. So melatonin. And then the last level, right at the lower molecular level, it stimulates literally a couple of enzymes called P450. Now, these are involved in the breakdown of lots of things. Some of the things you might not consider toxins, for example, coffee, which is probably why for some people taking melatonin can speed up the breaking down of the caffeine in your liver, and as a result not having that same alertness caused by the caffeine. Wow. That's because it stimulates some of the P450 enzymes, which are used in the body, in the cells, to break down the nasties, get them out of the body as quick as possible. And then on a brief summary, before I go into and I show you the evidence of the type of pesticides and heavy metals and other toxins that it takes out of the body, the studies show that it helps clear out, prevent and reverse damage, all those three things. So it can block it, it can stop it, it can help even repair the damage already caused in the brain and nervous system caused by toxins, in the liver, in the lung, in the skin. There's a whole heap of evidence showing that application of melatonin in creams. So you'll see a lot more evidence of that coming out. Sunscreens will have it around the world and so on, because it stops the damage done by UV light, but also helps repair it. But also it stops the damage from some of the toxic chemicals that are applied to the skin as well. So it works again at all levels and all toxins. Reproductive health, particularly the egg and the sperm. There's a whole body of evidence on improving reproductive health by getting rid of the toxins out of the body, particularly the egg and the sperm. There's something like 40% of the population can no longer reproduce properly, need some assistance because of problems, and a large part of that literally are the oxidation, the toxins, and all the damage being done by our living style and chemicals and so on around it, and it's linked in there. And literally, I'll show you some of the links in a moment, how it's used to clean out these pesticides and so on that are accumulating and causing the damage and stopping the egg and sperm and, as a result, reproduction. Then you've got protecting the cardiovascular system. And finally, as I've already mentioned, the gut. The gut is so important. One, for decreasing toxins going into your body, also improving the barrier. It looks after, it helps repair. It's great. Now the studies are coming out for IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, and IBD. Yes, melatonin, but you'll see that in the other video I've got on melatonin and the gut. So it helps improve that barrier and bring about repair, as well as rebuilding the gut microbiome, the healthy microorganisms in there. And as a result, it decreases the production of LPS and other toxins. LPS is something called lipopolysaccharides. These lipopolysaccharides are produced by the nasty bacteria in the gut, the wrong type, which are able to poison the barrier, the gut wall, cause leaky gut, and get into the body and cause inflammation all through the body, which then leads to all these chronic illnesses, everything from cardiovascular damage to literally osteoarthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, your pains, your aches, migraines. It's linked with all of those things, the LPS. And it prevents that by building the gut barrier and reconstituting the good bacteria in the gut as a gut microbiome in the large intestine. So it has all these different potential for improving the body by stopping the toxins getting in there, eliminating the damage done, and eliminating the toxins as well. From an evolutionary perspective, melatonin is the detox molecule. As a result, it shows in all of the hundreds and hundreds of studies that melatonin is literally able to detox all of these chemicals. And you're probably saying, well, where are they coming from? Well, remember, first of all, you've got the endogenous ones. These are the ones produced in the body, in the gut, in through our metabolism as metabolic byproducts and so on. I'm not going to go into those. At this point, I'm going to suggest we just look at all of these ones that are produced outside. And let's start with pharmaceuticals. All pharmaceuticals have negative side effects, and it's really if you're going to use a pharmaceutical, it's about the balance of the benefits, potential benefits, and the potential negative effects. And a couple of years ago, I had an accident and I was actually in hospital for 3 weekends. I was on high doses of corticosteroids. And this is where I really came across melatonin, because I was looking at, wow, these high doses of these corticosteroids, look at the side effects of them. And I always look at the side effects of, by the way, everything I investigate. And it was overwhelming in terms of skin conditions, bone conditions, osteoporosis, premature blindness, muscle, a whole raft of conditions, including an increased risk of certain cardiovascular diseases and even cancers. So I said, well, I don't want that. So what do I do? And I started looking into it. And the single best molecule that stood out was melatonin. That's when I started taking melatonin, because it literally showed that it counteracted virtually every, if not all of the side effects, the toxic side effects of the corticosteroids, including helping eliminate them, but also helping improve the outcome of the drug itself. So it actually multiplied the benefit by getting rid of the toxins, but improved how the corticosteroids worked. And it did with the also methamphetamines and chemotherapy. Now, one of the biggest issues with chemotherapy is the toxicity of it, because chemotherapy, particularly here in the case of cancers, you're using extremely toxic chemicals to literally poison the cancers in the body. Not a very effective way to go, but if you do use chemotherapy, then what you want to do is eliminate them as best possible, and melatonin helps eliminate them faster and improves the outcomes of chemotherapy. It's a win-win situation. Again, you can see how this is going to repeat many, many times. Mustard gas, which you may be aware, was something they used in World War I, has literally been banned, but there are some products out there which mimic mustard gas, and it shows that we can eliminate it. Alcohol is a toxin very common in our society, and one of the best ways of eliminating the alcohol and the toxic effects of it, right through to including the liver damage and the fatty liver caused by the alcohol. Melatonin helps here. Tobacco smoke. I did a huge number of investigations 30, 40 years ago all about the toxic effects of tobacco smoke. And of course, melatonin helps get rid of all of the various contaminants. I'll show you some of those. Radiation therapy, in particular, radiation toxicity, particularly therapy again for cancer therapy. One of the big issues is the damage caused and the remnants of the radioactive materials in the body, and melatonin works by, again, accentuating the benefits of the radiation therapy in terms of being able to get and deal with the cancer. So it improves its working of it, but also helps detox it, and get rid of it out of the body, which is what you want to do as quick as possible, because it will poison other parts of the body. The side effects of radiotherapy, X-rays, electromagnetic frequency. These are the things that come off your mobile phones, your microwave ovens. When you're standing in front of a microwave oven, you're actually getting a pretty fair dose of electromagnetic radiation, or extremely low frequency radiation, depending on what terms you want to use. And you're getting a dose. So a little recommendation here, always stand away from a microwave. I'm not worried what's going on in the microwave. When it's on, you're about a meter and a half, I've measured extremely high levels of electromagnetic radiation. And of course, it helps eliminate that. And of course, UV radiation, I've already mentioned in terms of skin and skin damage from the ultraviolet radiation from the sun. We all need to get out into the sun to get the vitamin D. As you can see, I'm well tanned. I get out there in the sun. I don't sunbake, but I spend a lot of time outside. And I protect myself by using melatonin, both on my skin directly, as I've already mentioned, and internally. So we've got all of these in terms of melatonin help detox. And you're probably saying, but I'm not exposed to all of these. One way or another, we are. We're exposed to many, and maybe not the corticosteroids, maybe not the chemotherapy or the whatever it is, but lots of these toxins. We're exposed to hundreds and hundreds of toxins every single day. And our body has this ability to be able to get it out of the body, not have a toxic effect or only minimal toxic effect unless something's going wrong in the body. And that's where it comes in. Heavy metals like lead. Lead used to be extremely prevalent when we use leaded petrol. It's a major issue now when you're renovating older homes because of the lead paints that are used. In many third world countries, lead paints are still used. So some of the products coming in there, you may even come across it as a contaminant in some cosmetics and makeups at extremely low levels, but particularly coming in from lesser developed countries or Asian countries. So I always prefer to use products that are produced in Australia with better standards and so on. Cadmium, the biggest source of cadmium is either directly through tobacco smoke, either smoking and or the secondhand smoke. And we were able to show that in our studies, again, decades ago. We're exposed to low levels of these toxins everywhere we go. And all of these heavy metals tend to accumulate. And it takes a lot of effort of the body to get rid of them. In fact, as a child, I used to play with mercury. So when I was about 40, I thought I'd do a little test, and I had extremely high levels of mercury. Now, that probably wasn't the only source, but back in those days, in the 50s and 60s, well, yeah, you could play around with it. Now, it's not available to do that. Then you've got mercury. The biggest source of mercury is coming from large fish. Things like tuna, shark, which are cartilaginous fish, and of course mammals in the water, whales, which are still consumed in some countries like Japan. They're not fish, they're mammals, but because they're so long-lived, they tend to accumulate large concentrations of mercury in their meat. So consuming that, you get a high dose of mercury. Another good reason not to eat whale meat in those countries. Arsenic, probably the biggest source of arsenic you get in rice. A lot of studies, and if you check out my other video on how to detox your foods, the research on arsenic shows the best way to detox the arsenic out of the rice, and the vast majority of rice coming from Asia will have arsenic as a contaminant in it. And so you soak it, and you soak it with a little bit of sodium bicarb. Check out my videos on that already. And then we've got fluoride. Fluoride's in a lot of water around the world. Fortunately now many countries and counties and different locations are removing fluoride. Fluoride is a toxic substance. In fact, fluoride is probably the single biggest reason why you don't have any more melatonin at 35, because it's a pineal gland poison. It literally poisons the parts of the cells that produce the melatonin in your pineal gland. And so it literally calcifies them and stops the production of melatonin. So fluoride is a pineal gland poison, poisons the melatonin, and of course melatonin helps reverse that by having extra amounts of melatonin. And as I've already said a number of times, post 35 years of age, you're probably not producing any in the pineal gland. Your other cells around the body will be, but struggling. So what you want to do is supplement, so then that can also help decalcify, decrease the damage already done in the pineal gland from fluoride in water and in toothpaste and other products. Nickel, when they were, I put this little number, 4 milligrams per kilogram. When they were detoxing in humans for nickel, they were using a concentration of 4 milligrams per kilogram of body weight. And that means that if you're 100 kilograms, then you multiply that, and that's 4 by 100, which is 400 milligrams. If you're 50 kilograms, 4 by 5 is whatever. And so you can work out what that doses they use. In fact, in the dosage, in the experiments they've done on animals and in humans, the dosages literally range from about 3 milligrams per day to 3 grams per day, and even higher in some of the animal experimentation. So it's incredibly safe. And these experiments, some of these experiments have gone for 6 months, and they've been evaluating the safety of melatonin as well. Nickel you will get from, it's a contaminant in lots of your brass and metal containers and so on. And some people develop a nickel sensitivity. And one of the first things that I would recommend for those people who have nickel sensitivity, they're the people who develop a little rash when you put a non-stainless steel or pure product in as an earring or jewelry. They can't tolerate it, and melatonin will help them to be able to deal with that, because it is in so many locations, e.g., as I've already said, in doorknobs and so on. Aluminium's clearly been linked with Alzheimer's. There is no doubt about it. It's added to our water. It's a food contaminant. It's actually a food additive too. Unfortunately, we're exposed to higher doses, and along with these other toxins out there, we are literally dosing up our exposure of chemicals that contribute to things like dementia and Alzheimer's. So what we want to do is reduce that, get them out of the body, get the aluminium out of the body. By the way, there are many studies now being done. There are probably a dozen or so clinical trials that are being done on melatonin to reverse Alzheimer's. Yes, to actually slow it down, to reverse some of the damage that's already been done because of its detoxification ability. And these are already studied clinical trials on humans that are already being done around the world, not including the ones that have already been done and shown positive results. A little bit of a hint there. If you want to avoid dementia and melatonin, one of the easiest steps to do is probably melatonin. Then we get on to other one, combustion products. These are from tobacco smoke or the exhaust pipes of cars and so on. These are called polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. This is that black sooty bit. But you also get them in foods. And when you heat up foods, when you overcook or cook, in particular processed foods, you can end up with these polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. One of them is called acrylamide, and this is the toxin that you find in lots of processed foods that are already processed and foods that you cook, e.g. your steak and meat and bread in the toaster and so on. You're producing acrylamide. Your body normally has mechanisms to get rid of that. We've evolved with this. We've had combustion in our lives for 200,000 years or 1,000,000 years or whatever it is from an evolutionary perspective. But of course, melatonin helps eliminate that. Then you've got some plant toxins, mold toxins. Mold toxins are very common. They're in any place where you have mold. So the top of the bathroom, the laundry, if there's a little bit of mold up there, they're producing some toxins. And it's a breakdown of the mold wall, the cellular material in the mold wall that produces or is made up with some of these toxins that's produced. You also have mold in the foods that we eat, and as a result of that, you're having toxins in there from the mold. The worst ones are, of course, when you've got a serious house or building contamination with mold. And over the decades, we've investigated many houses with what you'd probably call black mold poison, and the variations of the mold. You can also get them out in farmers. There's a condition called farmer's lung, which was related to using old straw that a lot of mold in and so on. So these mold toxins have toxic effects and can leave behind lots of the residues, and of course melatonin helps get them out. Bacteria toxins, LPS I've already mentioned, lipopolysaccharides being produced by the nasty bacteria in the gut, and sepsis, which is your body's reaction to things like a huge overdose of, or huge exposure to bacteria. And the bacteria toxins, and the body goes into a state of sepsis, and they're using this in experiments with humans who have a dose of sepsis, and which literally can kill them or lead to the death of limbs and parts of the body and so on. And high doses of melatonin use are very effective in helping reduce that toxicity of it and eliminate it out of the body as soon as possible, which is what you want to do. So it helps get rid of the bacteria toxins. And the bacteria toxins are what cause the problem. If you've got inflammation, a cut, and it's swelling, they're the bacteria toxins that helps get rid of those as well. And of course, there are dozens and dozens of studies on the benefits of melatonin in viral conditions, particularly in COVID. Yes, despite what you may have been told, melatonin is effective for helping control the outcomes of COVID in terms of the side effects of COVID, the effects on your body and health, and also your recovery from COVID as well as other viruses. Pesticides, we're exposed to pesticides every single day. Going outside and breathing the air, sometimes you're probably exposed to pesticides. There's a lot of controversy in farming locations recently where they've finally concluded that some of the pesticides called, herbicides, paraquat and diquat are linked with Alzheimer's and dementia and other conditions. The studies clearly show that, but it often takes the regulators 10 or 20 years to catch up. I know I was in one of those regulatory organisations 20 years ago, and I was the public representative trying to get across these ideas. Nowadays, the studies are supporting exactly what we're saying there, and melatonin helps get rid of it out of the body. But some of the pesticides, they're the ones, if you live in a rural area and they do aerial sprays or fogging, you're likely to be exposed to high concentrations. Organochlorines, some of these are you'll probably know DDT, which has been banned in most countries, but if you go into third world countries, it's still available, used much more restricted, but you're exposed to it. Heptachlor, chlordane, a whole raft of these. There's a dozen of them, and again, I did my studies back on those. My honours thesis back in the 80s was all about being exposed to these organochlorine pesticides, and we now know that it helps get rid of them. And in the animal studies, and they were using it 50 milligrams per day to help with the elimination process. Organophosphates, we're exposed to those on a regular basis. These are some of the sprays that you use around the home, in the garden, on the farms, in your food, in the air of agricultural areas, and yes, in the water as well. Now, you're probably saying, well, we've got the authorities who check the water. Well, again, we did some research with one of the large water organisations, and they didn't even know what to measure and monitor for some of these chemicals. So we were helping them work out what the best strategies for measuring and monitoring. They're in there, they're in the food. Now, third world countries Anything coming in from China is likely to be more contaminated than in America, Europe, Australia, because we have higher standards here, but we also have authorities to check. And you're probably thinking, when the food comes into the country, it's checked. No. Yes, a minuscule amount of it is checked, but the vast majority of the food checks are on the food going out of the country to make sure that you're not poisoning other countries or people in other countries. Yeah, funny about that, isn't it? So you don't want to upset the agricultural trade, so they make sure they have low levels of these pesticides below the tolerable dose and so on. When it comes in, there are very few measures done, and in many developing countries, many agricultural countries that you still use lots of these pesticides, the ones that are totally banned in developed countries, Australia, Europe, Britain, America, they're all banned. They're used in third world countries. And chlorpyrifos, you're exposed to on a regular basis. These are the common household 1-permethrin and cypermethrins. These are the ones that you use around the household. Again, they all have toxic effects. Some people, they're not toxic, and I see people spraying them around. We use pesticides on an extremely regulated form, probably twice a year on some outbreak in our household, domestic, not indoors actually, but outside. And even then we use it with special extra precautions. That's how I take it. I don't want to be exposed. I don't want the damage done. I don't want the byproducts of the breakdown products in my body. And if I do, I want to get rid of them using melatonin and herbicides. I've already mentioned glyphosate is probably the most common herbicide used, frequently used around the home, and everyone thinks it's safe. It's not safe. It has been linked with many conditions. We know that it's a gut poison that poisons the healthy bacteria, the bifidobacteria and the lactobacillus in the gut. We know it causes lots of issues. It is a ubiquitous contaminant. You will find it on virtually all, or if not all, most or many types of the foods that you eat on a regular basis. And of course, the video on how to detox glyphosate and other things I've already presented, so check that out. Soaking in bicarb, by far the simplest strategy out there. Unfortunately, I see a lot of people working with glyphosate around the streets, spraying the weeds, getting the weeds, to killing the weeds and eliminating them on the footpath or wherever it is in the parks. And I often see them without any respiratory gear because they've been brainwashed by the various organisations that it's safe. It is not safe. They are not safe. They do have both short-term and long-term problems associated with them, and melatonin is a good way to help get rid of them. Forever chemicals, PCBs, these are the ones that are used in fire, as fire retardants, have been used around the place and now finding up in water. Lots of these pesticides end up in water along with the perfluorooctanic acids. Old style PCBs even still show up in water contamination. Then you've got ones we actually put on our skin, oxybenzone. And there's about 24 toxic chemicals that we put on our skin to prevent sunburn and sun damage. And I suggest we're doing it the wrong way. And some of these ingredients are actually linked with causation of cancers and skin cancers and so on. So my message is get rid of them and use much safer products. And there are safer products and safer ingredients out there for sunscreens. And oxybenzone is one of those ones that I consider to be highly toxic. You put on your skin constantly, repeatedly, 3-4 times a day when you go out in the sun. And unfortunately, it is a toxic substance and you want to get rid of it. So how do you get rid of it? Melatonin. And finally, microplastics. Microplastics are one of the newest ones we've been looking at over the last 20 years, particularly in the last 5 or 10 years. And these are microscopic or even lower, we would say nanoscopic particles that are so small they're able to get into the body. They poison the gut microbiome. There's a little video on that one, and they're able to get into the body and cause lots of issues, including cardiovascular disease, cancers, and a whole raft of other conditions that we're not really aware of the full extent of the damage, but we do want to help eliminate them. And interestingly, of course, melatonin helps eliminate them. So what you've got here is just a snapshot picture of how versatile melatonin is in terms of detoxing the body, helping get rid of it out of the body. There is nothing that I'm aware of that comes anywhere close to the levels of melatonin and what it does. Now, how do you benefit from it as a supplement? What dosage? That's going to be the complex one. It varies in the studies. I would love to see 100 more human studies on it. End of the day, it is the single best molecule to help detox the body. And everyone talks about using various combinations of herbs and spices, which I've tried some of them over the decades and they've made me feel pretty sick. And this is really simple. I take it nighttime, I take it during the day. And you'll find a lot more on melatonin on my YouTube channel. Subscribe so that I can keep producing more of this cutting edge information and share it with your friends. Tick the boxes.